The stories behind the stories with Mark Arnold, exclusively on The Geek Speak Show.
And this is historian Mark Arnold with another installment of the Stories Behind the Stories, and today we're interviewing Darrell McNeil. And Darrell McNeil is known as an animator, and he's worked on various animated TV shows, including Super Friends, Pac-Man, Jem, Mighty Mouse, Ghostbusters, James Bond Jr., and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, among others. And he's also written the book Alex Toth by Design and Animation by Filmation. Thank you for doing the show today, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into animation.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. Basically what it was I'm a kid. I grew up as a kid, and I watched a lot of television, like most people do, and I wanted to get into comic books when I was a kid. My dad used to say that when I was 2 years old, I would go through the daily paper and tear up everything and eat everything but the funny section. And so he never got the sports scores. He never knew whether the Lakers won or not, like I really cared, being 2 years old. As I grew up, though, I wanted to get into comic books. I really, really did. My grandmother had gotten me, I still have it, I'm sitting in my bedroom looking at the very first comic book I ever got, which was a Superman that she gave me, with Lois Lane on the cover. It was an imaginary story. What if Krypton, what if Earth exploded into the Krypton and Lois Lane got sent there, became Supermaid? And so, considering my love of superheroines, it's kind of a subliminal thing of being a Superman book. But what happened was that I wanted to get into comic books. I became a child actor, became a background extra. I saw an ad that was in the paper that said, you can be on TV. I wanted to be on TV. With this face and this nose and pizza, everything else, pizza face, I had acne back then, I got on television. My first job was doing a show called Cowboy in Africa. I tried out for the lead boy anyway, and didn't get it. And the guy, Gerald Edwards, who did get it, I became his stunt boy. Wow. Which is ironic because we ended up working together on Fat Albert like 20 years later. But that's skipping ahead of the story. He was weird. He was the voice of Weird Harold. I was one of the animators on it. But that's skipping ahead way far. Okay. So what happened? And it's funny because I met a girl around that time who tried out a couple years later for the role of Marsha on the Brady Bunch. I didn't get Cowboy in Africa role because I was 2 inches too tall for it. She didn't get Marsha; she was 2 inches too short for it. Mm-hmm. If you can understand. But anyway, so what happened to get it? I get to the point. Having a conversation with me is like going from L.A. to Santa Monica via Cedar Rapids. You get there eventually. But what happened was that I fell in love with what happened. That was in '66 when Fred Silverman decided to go ahead and put, come up with a new Saturday morning schedule of cartoons and whatnot. And he put Superman, and he put, Frankenstein Journey of the Impossibles, Hanna-Barbera, one of my all-time favorite shows. Mm-hmm. And another one was Space Ghost and Dynaboy. When I saw Space Ghost, I said, I want to do that for a living. I want Batman to fly through the air, shoot neat blasts out of his hands, and have a deep, resonant voice like Gary Owens. And that's what I wanted to do. But more so, I want to do Space Ghost growing up. I want to do it with Gary Owens. I want to do it with Alex Toth, and I got to do all three.
Wow.
So essentially what happened was that I started drawing, learning how to draw, doing my own drawing, doing my own comic books, things like that. And then when I got out of high school, Westchester High School was 75, I was told by my mom either go to school or get a job. Being I'm lazy, I decided to go ahead and go to school. So I went to one class at Cal State Long Beach and one class at UCLA. Actually, 2 classes at Cal State because I flunked both of them. But I also flunked one at UCLA too. But the Cal State class was notable because I went to an animation class that was taught by a man named Art Scott, who was one of Hanna-Barbera's director producers, storyboard guys, big head honchos then. Mm-hmm. And he was known for the fact that he would come to he would come to Cal State Long Beach after working at Hanna-Barbera, and basically he would bring down films of the old shows that hadn't been on TV for years. And I learned to run a projector just like I actually run the things for him. And it got to the point we'd ask people in the class, well, who saw Huck Finn? My name would go up. Well, who saw this cartoon? My name would go up. Who saw? We know you saw it. And between him, he introduced me to Hanna-Barbera people, plus knowing him. And then I went to a class at UCLA on Saturday morning television that was taught by a woman named Bonnie Dorr. And it was through that class I met Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera. And I was creating my own characters even back then, making my own shows, superheroes and cartoons, Clue Club, mystery, Scooby-Doo type of stuff. And I took my drawings to show Bill and Joe, and Bill was starting to run a training class to bring new animators into business. This was like '76. Okay. And Joe saw my stuff and said, why don't you bring them into our director of development? I think you could sell something to them. So I went into the director of development, Dwayne Poole and Dick Robbins, and if there had been a record for that, I would have been the youngest guy to sell show concepts, the biggest studio on the planet at the time, because I went in there with 7 show ideas, and I sold them 3.
Wow.
They optioned 3 shows from me.
And which ones were they? Which ones were they?
Well, the concepts were, because of course they're mine now. One of them was a group of superheroines called the Barefoot Contessas. And one of the characters in particular, Bill latched on her. He saw a picture of a girl I had named Quick Change Chick who had a button on her chest, on a belly button, that could give her 100 different costumes, had different power to it. And he said, I like that push button chick. That one really grabbed him. So another concept called Time Team to them. Another one called Cybernetics, kind of playing off the whole bionic craze that was going on after Dynamite had come out that year. And it was about a month before I turned 18.
Wow.
And then Joe Barbera, he sent me over to talk to a guy. I don't know if you can do this type of language on this thing, but I don't care. A guy named Harry Love, who was running the training program. Harry Love was a rat. There's another word after rat, but I think it might be PG, so I'm not going to use that word.
Okay.
Darn it. And can you say bastard on this thing? If not, edit it out.
Sure.
Anyway, he was that.
Okay.
And I had called him a month before because I heard about the program. And so I'd like to come over. This is in October of that year, October 76. And I'd like to be training in your program. Oh, we don't have many people coming in until next April, Clem, on the phone. So I call again. And he says, don't you remember? I told you don't call till next April. Joe Barbera says, come in. What a weasel. Anyway, so I went in there, and because of that, I got into class there. And then they just started working on the all-new Super Friends. It wasn't even an hour show then. The show got picked up for a brand new season after, partly because of the fact that Filmation was doing the New Adventures of Batman at that time, too. So it was like, we better get on the case here. So they picked it up, and I started working for Hanna-Barbera about 2 weeks before I turned 18. And I would have been one of the youngest guys that worked in the business at that time. So that's kind of how I got into kind of the long, loopy way of how I got. Oh, before that, one thing real quickly too. I ended up working for Filmation a year later. But in 1970, I was one of a group of kids that was in the audience that they shot for the live-action audience for the show Archie's Funhouse. I was
going to ask you about that because I've heard that before, and I thought, is that how you got in, or is that totally independent?
I was independent. Pretty much, I was part of the thing when I was a screen extra kid. A Screen Children's Guild was what it actually was called. It was actually a guild that put kids in shows and whatnot. And what it was he got a deal. The person that was supposed to go couldn't go. So they asked my mom, well, can you come up to San Diego? I said, well, my mom said, of course. So she drove. It was a movie theater in San Diego. And it was me and a bunch of kids. Lou's kids, Erica and Lane were there. Hal Sutherland's director of Filmation, his kids were there. And a lot of other kids from, they pretty much were called for casting. We pretty much sat there and for about 3 days, sat in the seats, yelled, yay, Archie, and all that sort of stuff, and looked at the blue screen and just yelled at it. The thing that's kind of funny is Archie's Funhouse was actually, I think, the second live-action animated show that was ever done for television. It was a Saturday morning show. Huck Finn came before that, a couple of years before, but not many people did a show like that since. It's like, and it was a case where I never knew where Luke got there to making a live audience for Archie stuff, but I mean, in fact, I don't know if you probably know there's a book that just came out that we'll talk about, I guess, down the line called Lou Scheimer Creating the Filmation Generation.
Yes.
Yeah. That I was a major part of as far as editing book, putting a lot of stuff in there. And there's a photo in there of me looking at hot dog dancing by. Now, I put in there a photo of me looking up Archie's legs, but somebody felt that it was not appropriate, I guess, so what the heck. Of course, we knew he had nothing. Captain Marvel, he had nothing there either. So there you go. I mean, you know the story back in the old days, back in the Fawcett days. They actually had a running gag with Captain Marvel where they would actually sing a song, no balls, no balls, no balls at all. Captain Marvel has no balls at all.
I did not know that, actually. That's
and ours
funny.
did, and none of our characters did either. This is Saturday morning cartoons we're talking about. So there you go.
So I'll move on to your books, and the only reason I'm asking about the books is because they're two excellent books. One on Filmation, one on Alex Toth. I've been pronouncing that incorrectly.
Yeah, and if Alex was alive, he'd kill you. I mean, I'll give you a fast story. This is no lie. Paul Dini is an old friend of mine, wonderful guy. I've known him for years and years. He wanted Alex to do some stuff on the Batman series at one time. Unfortunately, the mistake he made was he referred to him as Alex Tooth.
Ooh.
Yeah, Alex wanted to bite something on him. I mean, he's a real great guy, but he definitely had to think it's Toth. It's Toth. It is not Toth. It is not Tooth. It is Toth. Get it straight.
I will remember it.
Yeah.
So he will not come back after me as a zombie.
Yeah, well, not a zombie. Maybe it's a ghost, but not a zombie. No zombies here. I can't deal with them.
Okay.
Go on.
But anyway, your two books, they're very highly revered and highly sought after, and also out of print.
Yes, they are.
Either of them coming back?
Well, animation by Filmation, most likely not, because I don't know how graphic you can get with this, but of course I will. I did it with a guy who was a rat bastard. He was a guy I worked with named Michael Swanigan. I call him Swinigan. He did a magazine called Toon Magazine, which I wrote pretty much every word of. Animation Information, I wrote every word of, except for the part on Jerry Lewis. To give an example of which, I showed this to a friend of mine, Andy Mangos, who I worked on with the Lou Scheimer book. The original entry from the Archies, he cribbed from some other book. And it was ran like maybe 6 paragraphs. The Archie entry I wrote ran about 5 pages, with all kinds of detailed stuff and everything that you couldn't even figure out. I'll give you a better example of how this guy worked, which goes into the writing we're talking about here. Toon Magazine, I think it was Bill Hanna had done a book, and I wrote a review on it. Okay? And the thing is, I left the magazine by this time when Joe Barbera came. I think one of them came their book first. I don't have it in my head right which came first, but Joe's book came out. Let's say for the sake of time, Joe's book came out.
Right.
In fact, I know it was Joe's book because of what happens next.
Yeah.
He took the review I wrote of Bill Hanna's book, took all the names of Bill Hanna out, and replaced them with Joe Barbera's name.
Wow.
Now, but here's the best part of it, and this is why I remember this now, because the very last line of the this is Bill. I'm switching it around. This is Bill Hanna's thing. He took all the Joe Barbera lines out and put Bill Hanna's name, because the very last line I wrote was, "I'd love to hear Bill Hanna's side of the story, wouldn't you?" So by taking out Joe's name and putting in Bill's name, the entire interview would become a review of Bill Hanna's book, with the last line being, "I want to hear Bill Hanna's side of the story."
Wow.
That's what kind of a mind he had. And ironically, though, it was partly because of him being such a sleazebag that I got Alex to agree to do Toast by Design, which is kind of the funnier part of the thing. I tried for a number of years to get him to do a book with me on animation, because I had all his model sheets, copies of them and everything. And I got them despite the best efforts of Jane Barbera, otherwise known as the daughter of Joe Barbera, otherwise known as Jane, the pain without a brain, who did not like me Xeroxing Hanna-Barbera stuff the year I was working there. I came out of there with 7 boxes of stuff.
Wow.
Because I was an in-betweener there at the time. I got into animation later, and I got into layout later. But that year, first season, when we were doing Dynamite and Captain Caveman and Laugh Olympics and Scooby-Doo, I was assistant. I got to do some model design on the side and some layout on the side. But as each department got let go before me, they gave me their stuff, because I collected the stuff.
Yeah.
So I ended up having 7 boxes of stuff. She had to make sure that security watched me leave. And if it hadn't been she didn't want me copying the stuff, but Toast by Design would not have existed without me copying that stuff, because I had copies that not many people had.
Right.
So with Alex, it's a case where it took a few years to kind of get his confidence. I worked with him at Hanna-Barbera on Super Friends and Challenge of the Super Friends. It was going through a freelance house called Love, Hutton, and Love. And because Bill Hutton was a big Toast geek and I could work really fast, I was working at Filmation staff at the time. And I'd go over to Studio City and pick up the layouts. And essentially, I laid out all the Super Friends acts that Alex boarded. So we had a kind of relationship going there. But Alex can be a very prickly type of fella. We kind of lost touch at that point. And then I worked with a good friend of mine, Steve Rude, on consulting on the Space Ghost graphic novel he did for Comico in '86. I sent Alex a copy of it, and I called Alex to see what he thought of it. Alex picks up the phone and goes, Well, it'd be nice if he wasn't ripping me goddamn off. Click. It took 5 years, but I finally got back in touch with the guy, and we had a relationship where for the next 15 years, he was probably he was my best friend. I was his best friend. I was the guy who kind of kept him in touch with the world and comic books, and we talked about more than just, gee, isn't Noel Sickles great? How about that Space Ghost? Gee, how's it working, with Milton Caniff? It's like I talked about everything with him, and he knew that I knew just about everything he'd ever want to know. He would go out the first hand, he'd go, you keep a lot of stuff in that brain of yours, don't you? Oh, the useless crap, don't you? And then 2 minutes later, he'd go like, what do you know about this person here? I said, oh, you mean stuff inside my brain of useless crap? He'd go, touche. So we'd go on back and forth. But what happened was that because I left Toon Magazine, I made a further proposal to him, and he was impressed, and we started going back and forth and talking. And eventually we decided to go ahead, and he said, let's do this. And the thing that happened that was really cool was that in 1996, I'll tell you part of what made this thing happen too. If you read the book, haven't you?
I have seen it. I actually don't own a copy. I have a friend of mine.
Okay.
So I flipped through it and pored over the pictures. So that's what.
There's a chapter. There's a chapter in there on the art of the storyboard. And what happened was that I managed to talk Alex into doing an article on storyboards because it was very good stuff. Swine decided he could edit this thing. Now, Swine couldn't edit water out of a faucet. He had that much intelligence going with him. So I wasn't going to edit Alex Toth. Are you kidding me? And so I kept it. And that's what the whole book got built around, that whole particular piece there. We went back and forth. I sent him questions. He wrote, a lot of dissertation. I added a lot of my stuff to it. Combined it with the models, combined it with presentation copies I had and things, and the whole book came in shape in 1996. Now, I didn't know he was doing another book with a guy named Manuel Awad called Alex Toth, which is about his comic book stuff. But fortunately, both books kind of crossed a certain point and then didn't have to go any further. So I did the book. It came out. It got nominated for an Eisner Award, which I'm very proud of, although when I told Alex the other books in the category, including a book done by Will Eisner, he said, the fix is in, kid. And sure enough, that year, Will Eisner won his own award. Who'd have thunk?
Wow.
But here's the thing about the book, because you're kind of wondering, I guess, what's going on with it. When I first put the book out, that was when nobody really knew who Alex Toth was as far as fans knowing he did stuff. Mm-hmm. And I had 5,000 copies printed. I put out 4. I'll tell you a little story about it. It's kind of a little Toth behind the thing. San Diego Comic-Con, Bud Plant. The books are just coming off the printer over here. It was a printer in Glendale. And I took 75 copies down to the con on Thursday. Well, they sold out of Bud Plants by the end of the day. So can you get some more? I decided to go back. So I went back here to L.A. where I live and got another 200 copies, got them out there Saturday. They were gone by the end of the convention. Mm-hmm. And the book did very well, to the envy of many people, including one Mr. Swine. So, but there are 1,000 copies I still have. They are in a secret underground location being guarded by my close friend Dick Cheney. And basically, because I'm a conservative Republican, I let that be known to a lot of people, especially with jug ears in the office right now. But that's just me. So, it's going to be there for a reason. I'm keeping it held there. And when I eventually get the time to put everything together with it, I'm going to restrip the books and bring it back out as a hardcover. With a lot of material that people have never seen before. And it even goes to people who are doing the other Toth book at the other place. It will have stuff that will be brand new stuff that Alex and I took. Because we spent, during the time that he was at home and until the time he passed, we talked. One thing I liked about him, we talked about new stuff. We didn't just talk about the old stuff all the time. We worked up a lot of characters together. I would come up with a character, and he'd come and give me his ideas about it. So he liked the fact that he still felt like he was doing something, and people asked him for his opinion. But the thing about the work between me and him is the fact that everybody wanted him to draw something. Can you draw this story here? Your story here? He didn't want to do that. So me, it's like, here's an idea, Alex. What you think about it? I kind of like this. You can do this. Let's do this. Let's go back and forth. Let's do this. In fact, one show I'm working on right now was the last thing we talked about before Alex died, because I was the last person to see him. I saw him the Thursday of the week he died, and he passed the next day.
Hmm.
And one of the shows I'm working on right now is one that we talked about. So it's going to be a cool thing when the stuff I'm pushing it. I'm developing it for various things we can talk about later on.
Okay.
But
well, I wanted to thank you. I know we're running out of time here. But
we are? Darn
yeah,
it
goes fast.
See, I knew this wouldn't be a problem as far as time is with me.
But
Alex has always say, ask me what time, I'll tell you how the watch is built. So
okay. I wanted to know if there's a way people can contact you, or if you have a website to plug.
Well, I kind of keep to myself right now. I kind of want to keep stuff on the down low until I actually get things going with it.
Okay.
I will tell you that right now I'm working on a number of web series right now, actually a number of mobile series. I'm planning on launching a mobile phone channel in late spring, and I'm doing a number of projects for it. One of them is a web live-action kind of a homage to the movie serials I'm crazy about called The Adventures of Caitlin Kitty Cat K, a.k.a. KKK.
Mm-hmm.
And I run that joke a lot throughout the whole 12 chapters there. A very sweet girl I know is the star of it. I got a bunch of other people that act in it, too. Her best friend is in it. And Gary Owens is the narrator of it, the voice of Space Ghost, dear old friend of mine. Lou Scheimer did a voice part for me for it. And the way it's looking, I'm going to probably debut the entire series just after San Diego. I'm going to do a free preview, and I'll put more details on about that as time goes on. I do have a Facebook page for Adventures of Caitlin Kitty Cat K, and as more information comes down on that show, information will be available there. I'm also putting together a couple of other series of one's live action, one's animated. Gary's doing the voice of the lead character, which is a character I talked about, Alex told about, a guy named Mr. Clift. Mm-hmm. And that's all I pretty much say about that concept. So he's doing the voice of that for me. It's going to be an animated concept, a live action concept, and a bunch of pretty much just some I'm doing directly for mobile phones and for iTablets, iPads, things like that. I'm a lot of when it comes to technology, but I'm working with people who know what they're doing.
Okay.
So, and that's where that's always going. So it'll start coming out this coming spring. It's going to be a subscription-based project. In fact, I'm ripping off an old thing from an old fan movie a long time ago, which is you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll kiss $3 goodbye.
Right.
And that's how that's going to be going with that. So I'm working on those projects right now. I also write various things. I still draw. But this is where most of my time is, creating all this new material, which I get to own, which I get to control. In fact, I worked. My friend Steve Rudy just had a book come out, Dollar Bill from DC, and there is a character in there that I said, "Who's this character?" And he goes, "I just popped him in there." I said, "Well, it's mine now." So. I'm doing a new character based on that, because I used to know Jack Kirby. I worked on Space Ghost and Hercules the Space Stars with him. Mm-hmm. And he called me Blackjack. Not because I drew like him, because I fought like him. He said you are an idea machine. In fact, I got to say this real fast. He was working for Ruby Spears and Hanna-Barbera too, and he brought a presentation piece in for a show that he was working up. I brought some control I was working up. They're both the same idea. It's like, how does this happen? But I'm an idea machine. I cannot stop. I want to go stop where I think of something else again.
Well, that's great. Anyway, we've run out of time, but I want to thank you for joining us today, Darrell.
Well, thank you much for the privilege. I really get a kick out of this. I knew this wouldn't be short because this is just how I am.
Yes.
Anytime you want to do a day of programming to me, trust me, I'll give you a day's worth of stuff.
Sounds great. Well, I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you want to comment on the show, you can always email me at mark@thegeekspeakshow.com.
You can hear the complete story behind the stories by going to funideas.50webs.com. That's 50webs.com. funideas.50webs.com. The stories behind the stories, exclusively on The Geek Speak Show.